Hello and welcome to our Give Love Bradford podcast, where we'll be delving into conversations being held across the district and learning more about how we can come together to create positive change for the communities that need it the most. Give Bradford supports hundreds of charities and voluntary groups across Bradford addressing inequalities. We invest in these groups by distributing grants and sharing advice, acting as a catalyst for positive change. Today's host is Steph Taylor, Director at Give Bradford.
Hello, I'm Steph Taylor from Give Bradford, and this is the Give Love Bradford podcast. Today, we will be celebrating lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, and other communities on the podcast. We will be shining a light on some of the brilliant work taking place across the district to support, champion, and advocate for people identifying as LGBTQ+. Later, we will be hearing from School of Rock and Media and Bradford Equity Partnership, two groups we've funded over the last year that are rooted in these communities and brilliant examples of the power of charity to make change for people and in the system. But before we talk to them, let's focus a bit on the bigger picture. Bradford has a growing reputation as one of the most LGBTQ+ friendly places in the UK, and the Pride events taking place this month are bigger and better than ever as a result. We wanted to tie this podcast episode in with Pride, and who better to talk to us about that than someone who is right at the centre of the action. I'm really excited to welcome as my co-host today, Councillor Richard Dunbar, LGBTQ+ champion for Bradford District Council, and a passionate voice for grassroots community groups like those we fund at Give Bradford. So, welcome to the podcast, Richard. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, Steph. How are you?
I'm very well too, thank you. We're really happy to have you on the podcast. As I mentioned there, you're LGBTQ+ champion for the council. Can you tell us a bit about what that means?
Yeah, so it's basically, it's ensuring that LGBTQ+ workers in the council, but also wider LGBTQ+ communities in the Bradford district are appropriately represented, celebrated, and actually have a real opportunity to ensure their voices are heard at every level, whether that's in planning of events, right up to ensuring that the policies the council sets are representative of the voices of the LGBTQ+ community. So it's quite a big remit, but it's an exciting one because we've got a really vibrant LGBTQ+ community, as you mentioned in your intro.
Brilliant. And you're a councillor yourself, so I imagine on top of your usual duties as a councillor, that's quite a lot of work, is it?
It is quite a lot, but it's the bigger picture stuff for me. It's exciting because, you know, I get to do things like this podcast, for example. But at the same time, you know, when people are really struggling to get by, because whilst we do a lot of good work and we celebrate, there's the reality that there are people within the district and across the country in the LGBTQ+ community who aren't represented, who don't have the support at home, who sometimes don't have employers who are supportive of them. So it's important from that side of things to ensure that those people's voices are also heard as well, because I think that's the real key thing to understand. There are people without a voice or representation. And I think that's how I really see my job, is to ensure the most vulnerable and marginalised in our community have a voice too.
Fantastic, thank you. And brilliant that's a role within the council and that's taken seriously. I know that some of the groups that we talk to are doing a lot of work around advocacy and voice for LGBTQ+ communities as well. So it would be great to pick that up with them when we chat to those groups later in the podcast. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about Pride Month and how Bradford is celebrating as a district.
Well, this is really exciting, to be honest with you. It's been an amazing month so far. And, you know, we're coming to last week or so, and already we've had events such as a silent disco, queer conga line in the city centre, for example, which was absolutely amazing. We've had queer comedy nights. We had the big main event at the Underground in Bradford on the 19th of June, which was absolutely amazing. And also we've had all the support groups running, so Equity Partnership, some of our guests today, but MESMAC and other council youth services who were running the support groups all month round, as well as all those big, shiny, fabulous, glittery events as well.
Fantastic. And it sounds like, particularly after the 15 months that we've had through the pandemic, that being able to celebrate and be in person together is a really important part of the celebrations.
Yeah, and I think people have needed it as well, just being able to be around people and, people who are being isolated, because that's something we also know. Like, we know on average LGBTQ plus communities are far more isolated than like the general population. So in order to be able to create space where people can come together and celebrate and be happy and, switch off for a few hours, people have really valued that, and long may that continue, actually.
Hear, hear. Yeah. And what kind of role have charities and community groups been playing in Pride? How important are they to the district?
Well, they're absolutely pivotal, not only in Pride Month, but as Bradford District as a whole, being a city of sanctuary, being a very open and welcoming city. Bradford is a district what has been built on, that good advocacy and support, and charities and similar groups such as charities have played a pivotal role, whether that's been in running the actual groups, whether that's been funding some of the events that I've mentioned, and also whether that's, giving advice as well to make logistical advice to make sure these events happen. So I don't think we can ever underestimate the power that charities and, funding bodies play in making events and such important landmark events like Pride happen in Bradford, so it's a massive thank you to give Bradford and to all associated groups that have made events like Pride happen and happen so successfully.
Yeah, it's really humbling to think about how many people it takes and what energy it takes to create something like Pride. But as you say, it's easy to think, there's a month going on and that's the kind of main focus of the work. But actually, we know from the community groups that we work with, it's day in, day out support, advocacy, fighting for people, celebrating people. That's what our community groups do. And it's a shame we can't talk to all of them today, but we're going to talk to Rebecca Sykes and Garen Garner from School of Rock and Media next. School of Rock and Media Studios has a unique approach to music and multimedia delivery and use a blend of social enterprise and pay-it-forward ideology to help bring a wide variety of people together to participate in enriching projects which positively affect lives and address social change. Their services include community and disability workshops, recording and production, SORM Stars Under 16s group, youth nights, practice rooms, and an LGBTQIA+ theatre group for young people called Mizcast. Welcome to the podcast, Rebecca and Garen.
Hi.
How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, good. A little bit hot, but yeah, all good.
Apparently it's 19 degrees, so it's going to be a warm one.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into it if that's all right. I mean, it's really warm today, but it's been changeable over the last 15 months, weather-wise and otherwise. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience of the pandemic has been like as an organisation and a partnership?
It's been madness because initially, just before lockdown had happened, we'd been working on a piece of theatre for the last 18 months and we were just getting to the end of it. We had 5 weeks to go before we were going to show the piece of theatre to the public. We were sorting out all the staging. And then the pandemic just came. We were locked down. Everybody had learnt the lines. They were ready to do this show that we'd been working so hard on. And then we just didn't know whether or not we would have the opportunity to do the show. Nobody knew how long lockdown was going to last. So we kept on meeting up with a group and saying, we'll be okay, just keep continuing to learn your lines. But as time went on, we realised that the show probably wouldn't go ahead. It wasn't fair for the young people to kind of be so full of anticipation really for the show because they were quite nervous. So we Garen and I had to kind of think on our feet really and think, well, how are we going to still work with the group, but to keep them occupied, to keep them enthusiastic, but while doing something completely different because, as I say, we've been working on this show for such a long time.
It's just weird. It's not something I ever thought I'd experience. Well, I'm pretty sure the world didn't think we'd experience it, but with being so close-knit and tight together for rehearsing and working together for all that time to then all of a sudden go to like absolutely nothing. It was just like what's happened? You know, we're supposed to be saying to the group, you know, it's okay, you know, keep up with your lines, keep learning, you know, learn your songs, and, you know, you sort of know where you're sort of supposed to be standing. And it was like, we didn't really know. So we were just sort of, you know, bluffing us way through it all. We made a point of keeping everyone together. We had a lot of people who were struggling. It hit a lot of people really hard, you know, because being an LGBTQIA plus group, a lot of people had a lot of, you know, there's some people that don't really have much connection with family. So through us having our meetings, you know, there were people that were closer to each other that could help each other, you know, for those that were struggling or those that have anxiety of leaving the house, especially with the pandemic going on. So it's been good to see stuff like that, to see them, you know, helping each other. It's been really good to see all that sort of thing.
It's taken us a long time to really develop this group as well. We've been doing projects for LGBTQ for about 2 to 3 years now, but this particular group were quite new. So it took us quite a while to get the group bonded, to get everybody to trust one another. And we were quite proud of that work, because that was all part of the kind of enrichment, really, of what we were talking about and the issues that we were talking about. We were really nervous about having this break, really, with the pandemic. As Garen says, a lot of the young people, there was a lot of mental health issues and stuff like that, that we felt that we kind of had to still keep that bond. Otherwise, we were going to lose not just the work, but the young people that we'd really worked hard to get this bond together with. So it was really, really challenging. Yeah. Having said that, Garen and I met a couple of times a week right from the beginning of the pandemic, and just continue just thinking about other ideas. We've always got lots and lots of ideas that we're kind of planning for the future. Yeah. So that's never what we're going to do. It's like, which one are we going to do kind of thing. Yeah. And it was just really the most important thing at the start wasn't necessarily the work, but it was keeping the momentum going for the young people. Yeah.
That sense of sort of community that we're, you know, without being cliche, that we're all in it together. It was very hard to, because when you're in a group with people that suffer with mental health, and obviously being LGBTQIA plus involved, there is a lot of that sort of territory that comes with it. So building those bonds is essential. So whereas most places that could do things like we do could go back and it'd be like, oh, right, well, we're all trained actors or we're all trained theatre people. They could go back and be like, right, we know to stand this 6 feet apart. Whereas with our show, there was people that would have come back, had things opened up, but there was also people that were scared and didn't want to leave the house. So there was no hope, really, of saving that show because of how we'd done it, which really is a shame, you know, all that work that we'd all done, because it wasn't just like, oh, look, here's a funny idea, let's do that. All the time. We can do it with some of them. We can be good at it, but it was very much a home-brewed idea for the ideas that we were getting from the group, you know, LGBTQIA stories by LGBTQIA people for LGBTQIA people. Say that fast 5 times.
On that point, Garen, it's Richard. First of all, I just like to say I've had the pleasure of seeing your work, and I can just testify how sort of powerful and striking it is. But I think you've touched on some of this already, but why is it important, Garen, first of all, that an LGBTQ plus theatre group exists within Bradford? And why did you personally feel the need to sort of join it? Why was that important for you?
Well, originally, I mean, I've always been a musical theatre person myself. I was raised on it, Disney, all that. So for me, it's always been natural. I went to a uni audition and basically I aced my singing, I aced my acting. I struggled a bit with the dancing, but I picked up eventually. And I got told that I didn't have the right physique to dance. Now, obviously, I am a bigger person, you know, which being part of the LGBTQIA plus community is a struggle in itself, being bigger. But I became one of these people that I was just thrown aside because I didn't fit the mold. And then I went to this group and I saw other people that were just sort of like left on the side, like people that were being left like bin bags on the side of a road waiting for someone to pick them up. And I was like, well, hang on a minute here. This person can sing. This person can dance. This person knows how to write a beautiful song. Why is nobody taking this talent and using it? So I was like, let's do something. You know what I mean? I took the experiences that I had, that I knew, and I made something. And I made this little group that was originally like 3 or 4 people. And it just got bigger and bigger because there were other people that were coming in. They were saying like, oh yeah, I like that. Can I join? You know, and it was all the sorts of people that were coming in were people who are LGBTQIA+. And it just so happened that all of these people that were being thrown away for certain things happened to be LGBTQIA+. So it was like, well, these stories, these people, I don't see people like this on TV. I don't see people like me on TV. And if I do, the person that looks like me is the comic relief. Or my story is I'm coming out to conservative parents. And that's not every gay story. It's not every LGBTQIA story. We have real problems and we don't all look perfect. I call it the rainbow ceiling myself. You know, they always say you've got to break through the glass ceiling. I say I've got to break through the rainbow ceiling because you've got this rainbow ceiling of these picture perfect Instagram gays or your really stereotypical butch lesbians, or if they're going for the sex appeal, the really pretty feminine lesbians. And it's like, but not every LGBTQIA+ person looks like that or acts like that. And that's why I was like, somebody needs to show this. Somebody needs to show that it's not all that. Do you know what I mean? And it just so happened to be in Bradford. And Bradford was somewhere that I was initially, you know, you hear the stories and I was like, oh God, I don't know, I'm a bit scared. But then the more I've come into it, like I'm forever down Bradford gay scene. I love it. There's a real heart there that you don't see in the more commercialised places like Manchester or Leeds. You're seeing real people that aren't, you know, like I said, those people that I wanted to celebrate, I was seeing those people. And I think that's why it's perfect just in Bradford, that perfect little corner.
Do you know what a great way to finish your little segment on there. Bradford, it's perfect, that little corner. Brilliant, Garen. And that's really, really powerful. And I think you probably spoke for hundreds, if not thousands of people of the LGBTQ plus community with your contribution there, and shows you why Miscast is so important. And Rebecca, from your point of view, knowing now how important it is for members of the LGBTQ plus community, what's the vision? What's the next year, 2 years look like for Miscast, would you say?
Garen and I work really, really hard. We work for many, many, many hours throughout the week in our own time, coming up with ideas, lots of different ideas for shows, concepts and things like that. The group's all completely group-led. So we don't exactly write a piece of work and then come up to the group and say, right, we are doing this. We spend quite a lot of time with the group having incredibly deep and difficult sometimes conversations about our lives, really, and about some of the things that affect us, situations and experiences which may be really difficult to talk about. And we work with whoever we're working with at the time with their stories to create a piece of work. So in that respect, the theatre group's really organic. If we were just working with 1 or 2 young people, that would be fine and that would be great, but we would work around the stories that those young people had to tell. Because we always have to realise as well with the group that we've got, it's not going to be the same group of young people forever. There's quite a few of our group at the moment that are moving on to university. And although that they've said that they want to continue to come and help in lots of different ways, which is so nice to hear, they want to come and be the makeup person or want to come and help with the writing or sound, the young people will move on. So we want the work that we do to represent the people that we're working with at that moment, which hopefully will make each story and each project really, really fresh. We won't have a particular type or a particular style of theatre that we do. We like to think that we're a theatre and multimedia arts like company as well, so we can bring in things like film, things like dance, things like projection, just anything. It depends on the young people. If the young people is really into doing set design, then we'll make one particular project really set design heavy. It all depends on their needs and what they want and how can they flourish. So in that respect, it's a really exciting thing to be involved in because it's always fresh. It always depends on the needs of the group, who we're meeting at the time. And although we lead the whole group and we kind of tie everything together, it's a complete project. Working with, the young people completely. We're not a college or a university, so we don't have those boxes to tick. So we can kind of follow our own rules, which is good. No one's going to end up with a qualification at the end of it. They're coming out of pure passion. You don't necessarily have to be good at arts or media or acting. It's all about vision. It's all about ideas and about your imagination. And we work through that together. The conversations that we have.
I'm really excited by what you said there about, the difference between you and a college and an education setting, because I think the power of community groups is so much about that ability to be able to flex and do personalised stuff with people. And, the power of what I've seen in your model, that's the bit that really works is being responsive to every individual and what that individual's bringing on any given day, who they are and what they need at that time is such a responsive thing to do, and it's brilliant. It's a really important part of what you're doing. I want to ask you how you went from that to establishing an organisation where we can give you funding at Give Bradford and you're working with hundreds of young people. How did you kind of go on that journey and what difference has funding made to what you can do?
We haven't been going long. It's been really organic. I was basically, I run an independent arts organisation called Void Arts. I was asked by SOM to come in and kind of work with this group who didn't know what to do, but they wanted to do something substantial. So that's when Garen and I met and we realised we clicked and, I really believed in his work. And since then, we've had some successful funding bids working as a partnership. We've done about 3 or 4 projects to date, and they've all been really different and they've all been really great. And we've reached out to the LGBTQ plus community as part of the youth service as well to try to get more young people involved. So as I say, it's quite organic. So we had a project which was going to be performed to the public, which unfortunately wasn't. And because of lockdown, there was some resilience funding from Give Bradford that we applied for, which was, it was really, really helpful for us. We were successful with it. It was for 4 months' work. I think it was from May to August in 2020. And it just gave us that time for some direction to definitely work with the young people, because Garen and I were doing it anyway. We do put a lot of our free time into the work that we do. It wouldn't happen otherwise. The funding really gave us direction. It gave us
a boost as well. It was that sort of reminder that yes, people do care. Do you know what I mean? It was that oomph that we needed. It gives you that a little bit more passion just to keep fighting through.
And do recognise us as well, because we're relatively a new group, and it's quite nice. It feels so nice to be recognised for any of the work that we do. We're always chuffed to bits when we're invited to do things like this, because it kind of validates us and all the work that we've done. So the funding that we got enabled us to really complete the work that we'd been doing before lockdown. Although we couldn't go out and do a performance, we wanted to complete the work. We wanted to wrap it up, to give it some kind of completion. And so we worked with the group and we came up with lots and lots of different ideas. How could we possibly change this project but still to have an outcome?
Yeah.
So we spoke about maybe doing a piece of theatre online via Zoom and things like that, but that turned out not to be practical really. So we ended up coming up with an idea of using one of the stories from a character out of the show and just telling his story as part of a short film that we made. It was a really different piece of work than what we anticipated, but we were really, really proud of it because it did tell the story of one of the young people from the show. We had an outcome for all of that work that we'd done.
Yeah.
We can say that was an actual piece of work. And because we did it in lockdown as well, there's something quite sentimental about that as well. But we don't feel that we've wasted all of that work as well.
Yeah.
As well as doing that work, we use the funding to meet a lot more regularly and develop ideas for the future as well. So we feel a lot more, we don't feel lost, if you know what I mean.
That's brilliant to hear. Thank you. And I know a lot of our groups that work with LGBTQ plus communities find it hard to go on that journey from one individual to a group and to get funding. And it's something that we're working on at Give Bradford. So look forward to chatting to you more about that in the future. But for now, Garen Garner and Rebecca Sykes from School of Rock and Media, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
So next on the podcast, we're going to welcome Sebastian Sumner from Bradford Equity Partnership. Bradford Equity Partnership are an organisation that we've funded at Give Bradford, who are run by and for LGBTQ plus communities. Their aim is to make the lives of LGBTQ plus people better by influencing service providers, making sure voices are heard, providing services, building cohesion between groups, basically anything that makes the life of LGBTQ plus people better. Sebastian, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, nice to be speaking with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can you start by telling us a little bit about what the last 15 months have been like for Bradford Equity Partnership? And then I'll hand over to Richard, who I know has got lots of questions for you about your work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been chaotic. I imagine a lot of other people have had the same sort of organised chaos that we have, especially with obviously multiple lockdowns and things not quite being on track with restrictions and everything. It's been really difficult. A lot of the work we do, we don't just support young people. So Equity as a whole, we support older LGBTQ plus individuals as well. So we've been having regular Zoom sessions. The older, you have to forgive me, there's two groups, there's Older and Wilder and Older and Bolder. And I always get them mixed up. I think it's Older and Wilder is the lesbian group. And they've been having like COVID safe walks every fortnight, which is quite nice. A nice way to keep in touch with each other. So we've had meetings just as a whole, like with the staff trying to figure out where to go from here, how best to provide the support. A lot of the support for the young people has been online, which some of them really love because they don't have to leave the house. And some of them absolutely hate because everything's online for them now. School, seeing the friends. And it used to be they could just all pile into the youth centre, have a nice relaxing session. Maybe we'd do like some educational stuff or like activism type things. But now it's just like, right, log on to Zoom, here you go. Everything is on Zoom. But thankfully, we're starting to run groups again, which is really nice. It's been a bit, we've only had a couple of, I think we've had literally like one case in the groups I've been working in, which is stunning. We had to do a lot of, because it's obviously quite a small centre. It's cosy, it's nice, but it doesn't lend itself to big groups, unfortunately. So we've had 6. We've gone up to 10 now, which is really nice. But yeah, a lot of it has just been making sure people are okay and trying to keep those communication channels open for people, even young people that we've not seen in a long time or our older members. We just try and let them know that we're still here, really, that we've not gone anywhere, we've not vanished over the pandemic, we're still about.
That's really brilliant to hear, Seb. And like Give Bradford, I think the council are very big fans of Equity Partnership and the amazing work you do. And I use that word purposely because it is amazing work in supporting our communities. And you mentioned the older people's groups and some of the youth groups. Could you just give a bit of an explanation about some of the other groups and the other work you do at Equity? Because I know it's so wide-ranging, because I think people would really like to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot, especially before everything. We used to have like a little a schedule type thing, and it was always full, which was really good. There was a refugees group that took place in the centre. And as far as I'm aware, that's moved largely online as well. We've had a lot of contacts from people as well that are moving back into Bradford, like maybe they've left for whatever reason, and they're moving back, whether because of the pandemic or they just miss Bradford so much, and they're wanting the support as well. We've got the LGBT groups. We have the Older and Wilder, Older and Bolder, the young persons group for under 16s, and that's anyone who feels they fit under the umbrella. We have the 16 to 19, the one for anyone who feels they fit under the trans umbrella, that's Phoenix, Sound Spectrum, and then we have Shades, which is a group for LGBT people of colour. Well, young people of colour.
That's absolutely amazing. I think that shows such a diverse range of groups there. And I particularly want to ask you about the support that you offer for the trans and non-binary community, and how important is that element of it? Because there has been stuff what's happened where the trans community have been unfairly targeted in many ways in the media and things, but how important are those support groups at Equity Partnership for the trans and non-binary community?
Absolutely, massively. Especially over the lockdowns, because obviously a lot of the people are spending time at home. In the first lockdown, we work in partnership with Bradford Youth Service. We did a little delivery type thing where we delivered like these packs and created things to people, especially young people, just with a bit of an ulterior motive that we could check in with them as well and make sure they were okay. And a lot of them were like, actually, no, I'm struggling with this or that. And for a lot of our trans and non-binary young people, it was a bit difficult because we know them as they are, you know, their actual name, but they have their dead name or different pronouns at home. And it was really difficult for us as well, I think, to see that and to see them so distressed. And you can see as we've moved back into being in person, a lot of them have become happier because they have the opportunity and that space to be the person they actually are rather than hiding themselves as they might in every other walk of their life. It makes it a lot more difficult for them on top of everything else with COVID. And obviously a lot of them, they're at that odd sort of transition, forgive the pun, point in life where everything's changing. They're leaving school, their friends might be changing. And on top of that, they have to go home or back to where they live and they can't even be their actual self. So a lot of our work with trans and non-binary young people is based around something as simple as just giving them that space to be themselves and to meet other kids like them, I think, because a lot of them, like, they'll come in and they'll be like, oh, I didn't know there were other people like me. And it's so, like, sometimes it kind of makes you want to cry a little bit because it's like, yeah, there's a whole community for you. And I like to think we can sort of be a step from into the community as they grow older as well.
And do you know what? You are, Seb, and you and the rest of the staff and the volunteers at Equity Partnership, a real example, not only to the rest of Bradford, but actually to the UK in terms of LGBT practice, because I've seen a lot of work across the UK and the world. And I think the Equity Partnership in terms of support are at the absolute pinnacle. But one last sort of question from me before we pass over to Steph is, it's Pride Month. And that's really important that we celebrate. But to you personally, Seb, what does pride mean to you?
Pride is personal, I think, most of all. Whether you're out or not, Pride Month is for you. It is a time where you can look back happily on the history of our community. And even if you're not out, even if it's only you that you're out to, it's a time for you and to look around and realise that you are absolutely not alone. And even if the only way you celebrate is you might have a playlist that you really like to play in secret when you're on your own, or if you go out with friends or go out to some of the Pride events, it's about acceptance and learning to love yourself and everyone else in the community.
Thanks, Seb. That's amazing to hear and really inspiring. I was struck by what you were saying about being there for people in the long term. And I wondered if you could say a little bit about the role of funding in that? You know, do you guys have the funding that you need to support people with what they need in a flexible way? And what else do you think funders like us could do when we're partnering with you to make your life easier?
I think obviously funding is important, especially because we do work with such a wide range of people with such different needs. Like I said, a lot of the young people sometimes we'll bring in activities to them, and some of them are absolutely thrilled. They're like, oh, I never knew about Stonewall, this, that, the other. And then others are like, nope, I just want to sit here and be in a queer space. I'm like, that's fine. But I do think long-term sort of ongoing funding support is definitely important, because it can take like 3 years to research, involve people, get everything planned and something up and running to try and make a difference. Definitely support around sort of community cohesion stuff. So like we used to do something, I loved it personally, called the Saturday Cafe. And like different groups would take ownership of it, and it was absolutely brilliant. And we'd have like sort of intergenerational events. So like the young people learning from the older people. And it was just really lovely to see that interaction. And personally, I want to make stuff like that happen a lot more. And anything funding wise to support that would be amazing.
We will keep that in mind, and really great to learn more about what you've been up to and what your plans are for the future. Sebastian Sumner, thank you so much for joining us from Bradford Equity Partnership.
Thank you for having me.
What did you think, Richard?
I'm quite inspired, to be honest with you. But I think the reason is because that grassroots energy from our community groups within Bradford is really so evident and apparent. And despite the challenges that have existed over the past 15 months, it's also important to note that the work you do in Give Bradford in supporting those groups, I think it came across, I think Rebecca said, because of the support received through the Resilience Fund, that meant they were still able to have a bit of breathing space, still able to support those people in their group they were so worried about. And it gave them that bit of vision to be able to move forward and see that light at the end of the tunnel. So a massive credit to Give Bradford, actually, in giving that support to people.
Yeah, I think it's a theme we've come back to a few times on the podcast, but being able to partner with organisations like that and provide funding that doesn't have a lot of strings, but actually facilitates what Garen was talking about so clearly and what Seb was talking about so clearly, that is, bespoke and individual work that listens to individual people and treats them as individuals. You can only do that if you give funding in a way that doesn't have targets attached to it. Doesn't kind of mean that people have to jump through hoops in terms of saying what they're going to do at the beginning, but just trusting organisations like these brilliant organisations we have in our communities to do what's right for people. And that's absolutely what we're all about at Give Bradford. So I'm glad you picked that up, Richard. Thank you. And hopefully we can do a lot more of it for our LGBTQ plus communities moving forward.
Yeah, and I've just sort of one final point from me as well. I think, listening to what Seb said, talking about all those different groups that exist, and I think it's sort of time that funders perhaps took a similar view to Give Bradford in terms of listening to the needs that exist within communities. So asking those communities, what is it they need to be able to better support and progress their respective communities along? I think there's something to be said in that. So starting from where the communities are at in their lives, I think that's so important, rather than having to jump through hundreds of hoops to get a couple of grand. Do you know what I mean? I think that's so important. So yeah, so it's really good to hear those stories we've heard today, and to know that Give Bradford and others are there to support those groups as well. It's great to hear. So thanks for having me. No problem. Thank you so much for joining us. That's it for this episode. Thank you for listening, and thank you so much, Richard, for joining us. Thanks to Rebecca, Garen and Sebastian as well. I've been Steph Taylor, and this is the Give Love Bradford podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, take a couple of seconds to rate it on your favourite podcast platform. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and subscribe to our newsletter. And you can visit our website at givebradford.org.uk. Feel free to email us at givebradford@leedscf.org.uk. Speak to you soon for the next episode of Give Love Bradford.